This is Empowered Human Academy. Welcome home.
But when I look at my life, I'm like, oh, it's super impossible to miss out when you're connected to yourself, to like God, and to like your calm ass like soul.
This is about love. This is about light. This is about the idea that you have everything you will ever need.
And this life of yours, this is where you grow, you expand, and you remember who you really are.
I'm Abe.
I'm Isaac.
In Empowered Human Academy, we join with humans of all kinds to feel the inspiration that can only come with empowered living.
The stories you hear today are unique, but the energy you hear today belongs to you too. So, with hearts wide open, let's begin.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Empowered Human Academy. Today we have an awesome person on our podcast that we're so excited to dive into conversation with. Her name is Trace. Trace, thank you so much. You're a singer-songwriter, creative. We're so thrilled to have you here. How are you doing today?
Hi, thanks for having me. I feel great because the weather in LA is gray today, and that brings out a weird joy.
I love it. Excellent. We've lived in Chicago for many years, and so we understand the cozy kind of comfort vibe that and creative vibe that cloudy days bring.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, absolutely.
We kick off all of these conversations with the question of identity, not the identity that you serve up to others, although there may well be overlap. It's who you are when you come home to yourself and you're not presenting anything. It's just you being you, locked into who you are. When you're in that space, what words of identity feel right to you?
That is an intense first question. Oh my gosh. Cool. Yeah, I think the first word that comes to mind would just be love. I think it takes a lot of hard work to love yourself. And in turn, obviously I want to love others better through that. So I think my identity rests upon, I just want to be calm. Like, because I'm not, I'm like, I want to do everything and I want to plan everything and I want to, but I'm just like, I think when I come home and I'm by myself, and what I rest on is just like the woman who loves and loves well, hopefully.
Yeah. Can you tell me about your relationship to that over time? Like, that's such a beautifully simple understanding. Is that something that you were like, is that something you've had the entire time? Is that something that you came into?
You know, I think it's more just like I've had this facade that I know is not true anymore, of just like, yeah, like I'm tough and I have like tough skin and I'm good and like it's fine. But I think with age and experience and with expensive therapy and spiritual experiences, I feel like I'm actually very tender. I'm so soft. And so I think the strength that I am finding equates to the softness I equate to like love and what love is for me. And it's powerful. I mean, I don't know. I think it's like all you need is love is a very true statement. And it's really obvious when you see someone not loving. And I think that's what truth is, you know? So I think for me that I'm growing more into what I believe to be just the point of why we're here.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Different people have different answers to like why we're here and what we're here to do. And when you hold, I don't know, like the words that you're giving me, as with maybe all words of identity, that's an overstatement. I'm not gonna go that far, but like the words that we choose for identity often, but not always, let me say it the other way. Words of identity are different than like the things we apply ourselves to, right? And there's overlap there, and we discover ourselves in certain practices. So I guess that's the question that I want to ask here. Like love, calm, like these words that you're giving me, how do they play into where you choose to put your time? Like how your days play out?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think almost like it's almost like my work doesn't work when I'm not loving myself or loving others. So I don't know if this is off the topic, but just even if I'm singing a song, or I write a song and I sing it and someone feels connected, I'm like, amazing. And then I like connect with them after and they're like telling me how much they love it. And I'm like, thanks, babe, and just like go away. I don't know, like versus being like, oh, what I was able to do, what I was able to craft, actually found its way to someone, and how can I kind of respond and kind of take in their experience and just be like, that it's kind of selfish in a way too, because it's like, I love when people feel seen and heard through my work.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, I think the love part keeps me perhaps further from my ego. Like it's not about how amazing I sound or how well I write, but it's about getting to connect and being a part of, like, I don't know, like, it's so dramatic, but like this humanity, this community of like, oh, we all feel things and we're all together and you're helping me, I'm helping you. And it's like so beautiful. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
That completely makes sense. Yeah. So is the part where that loops, the part where what you make loops through the perception and selfness of someone else on its way back to you, is that like a necessary part of the act? Like is music an expression for its own sake, or is it inextricable from like someone listening to it? How does that play into your relationship to your art?
Yeah, there's this quote where it's like, do you do art for yourself or for others? Yeah. And I feel like a lot of quote unquote artists are like, it's my expression, it's me, and that's fine. But I'm very business minded too. So I'm like, I do music because it's amazing, but I'm also like, let's build a business, people.
Cheers.
And I want to buy my mom a house, all those things. So
absolutely.
But I think when it comes to the process of creating, I think that in a way, perhaps I do feel like I have, what's a better word than, calling, but like almost a responsibility. And so I want to be, and again, let me know if it's like, doesn't make sense, but I want to be like a vessel for the process. And it's not like, it's not me, it's, it's this higher power, it's God. It's no, like I'm doing a lot, but I do feel very honored to like literally get to write things, and then somehow I get to sing them, and then somehow that gets to be on your streaming services, and then it reaches a random ear. Like it's an honor to be an artist. And so I kind of want to always remain open, maybe.
Yeah. That's beautiful. How did you come into that awareness? Like, if like just the arc that starts at, I don't know, birth, and then arrives at you being here with the art that you, an expression that you have in motion. Like, how did you land here? I don't even want to use the word land. How did you come to a place where you are in the kind of emotions that you are in right now?
I have really learned that, man, for someone who has grown up pretty alone and only child, like great mom, but single parent, and I'm comfortable alone. I like being alone. I'm not married. I'm not with a partner. I want to be, but all these things, I've lived a long life alone, and I've learned that, man, you need people. We were created to need people, and it's very vulnerable to need people, and I'm excited to need more people. So all that to say is, the answer to your question is, it was a true connection with someone. This is a very tangible experience, but I've been on 1 or 2 tours. Still, I feel new in my career, but I got to experience a tour, and I met, some cutie fans, and they were like these young Asian girls, and they came up to me and they were just like, where are you from? And I'm like, Orange County, just kidding. Like, I got that they were asking like, where are my parents, like what's my nationality? And I was like, oh, I'm Vietnamese and Malaysian. And they were like, us too. And I was just like, wow, that's really emotional for me. That was like, I experienced that moment. And then I have this other story I tell most people, because it changed my life too. But there was that story, and that really, that's like another story that I'll probably talk about later, about being Asian American. But then also being at another show, and I met this young man, and he was like obsessed with me, and I was brand new, so I have no idea how he knew my music. But my manager was like, this guy was singing your set the whole time, you have to come out. And I had like no fans on this tour because I was an opener, and I loved it. It was like a practice tour. I come out, and he's like, he is just giving me compliments, like you're like the next Lord. And I'm like, I don't disagree. And
yes, I love that.
And he was just like, I love your music, and it really spoke to me in my depression and anxiety. And then at the end, he was like, as a gay Latin man, I feel so seen. I'm gonna cry now. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm not gay or Latin or a man, but the ways that I reached him, I'm obsessed with. And I guess that's the realization of how I'm landing in this place of like, oh, if I could just be used for the rest of my life in that way, literally, that's all I want to do on this earth.
Cool. So in that moment of kind of a profound connection with someone that is different than you, what did that kind of spark inside of you? I know you were mentioning gratitude, but did that influence like how you performed or what you wrote after that? Or how did that kind of impact your journey, if at all?
Yeah. I think it expanded the corners of loneliness that we all kind of hang out in. I think it also opened up my heart and mind towards how I can't hide my own anxieties, because it clear that he saw it and felt it through my music. So he was reflecting me to where I kind of just had this broader understanding of like loneliness and of sadness, and then you go back to just like of being human, of just being human. And I felt like, oh, that's why he feels seen, because we're freaking human.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned earlier about a moment or times where you thought you were like, closed off or hard, or like, and then you realized you were soft. Actually, you used the word soft. Tell me about that realization and that journey of kind of going inward and connecting with your emotions.
Well, I think I'm I'm an avoidant, everyone. This is my confession. And I avoid conflict and pain. No, I avoid conflict. I love pain. I kind of live. I'm a 4 on the Enneagram. I like live in suffering. I'm a glutton for suffering, but I think the hardness was just obviously a defense mechanism of ever meeting someone. I don't think that I grew up in a place. I don't think I grew up in a place maybe that felt. I don't know. I'm unpacking a lot as we speak, because I'm learning things at a very fast rate. But I think that the hardness was more just like, I'm fine. Like, because I haven't lost a limb in the war of my life. Like, it's just, I'm okay. And I think hardness almost turned into, ego. And I'm really, that's just not, that's gross and not, that's not who I am for sure. And I think I was afraid to admit that I was actually like a warm, like gal. And I had good people in my life who called it out. And that kind of really helped fast forward that journey of, they're like, you're not like a jerk. And I'm like, but am I not? I just kind of had this perception of myself. I'm sarcastic. I'm very like honest, and I don't twirl my hair. You know what I mean? Like I'm not that girl. So I think perhaps this is relationally that I'm speaking about, like intimately, but like I feel different than many girls. And I grew up because I did grow up differently than many girls. And I always thought I had to be a certain way to like get a certain thing. And I'm realizing that that's just not who I am. So
I'm so this conversation opened up with a question of identity, but this is like the question of like, what am I not, is also interesting. How do you know when, or like, how do you recognize when when one is behaving in a way that is not actually who one is? Like you sounded very sure for a quick sec about like, okay, I know that I'm not that. What does that feel like? How do you know when you are not who you are?
That is a great question, isn't it? How do you know? I think it's a combination, I think, of discernment and intuition of just, I know when I'm striving, like there's like this mini anxiety bubble that's like deep in my gut that I'm like, okay, you can just be this for a second because you're like fine. But I think when you're free, you're free. I don't know, like, when you feel like a little bit lighter, you're like, you overthink less. I don't know. It just feels like a soul shift, really. Like to be in your body, to really feel your body is like a gift, and I'm learning that more and more.
Yeah.
What does that feel like for you in those moments of freedom and flow? What is it like? Yeah. What is it? What do you think about, or what do you create in that space? Are you building new friendships in that space? Are you diving deeper internally in that space of freedom? Tell me about that space of freedom for you.
I think freedom for me, right, what comes to mind is energy. So I have energy. It's like when I'm free, I have energy to like, oh my gosh, somehow I was like able to really love this friend who's harder to love on like most days. And it did not drain me. And I like left feeling like it was like a supernatural moment. And I was like, that was amazing. And she felt loved. And that feels like freedom. You know, it's kind of less going more in because I'm always in here. It's hard to be in here. I'm like, get out of here. It's great. But I need a breather for myself most days. Yeah. And so I think the freedom and the unlocking, it feels like energy to me, and like a little bit of less self-focus, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Which is interesting to say out loud.
Yeah. It feels like maybe it's, you said you focus a lot inward, but maybe it's just getting energy out that needs to get out and unblocking.
There are a couple times already that you've kind of alluded to, like you're coming into a lot of understanding right now, or you said you're learning out right now, like even some of the, like it feels like you might be testing language. What's going on right now?
Yeah, well, you guys, I'm Asian American. I'm not sure if you can tell. And and I'm using humor as a shield to kind of share that, like, man, I have never been more proud to be an Asian American. But it's a lot of reconciliation, especially with this last year. Yeah. And just feeling so, wow, like when the shootings happened in Atlanta this year, I cried for like, 2 weeks. Like I couldn't stop crying. Everything made me cry. And granted, yes, it's horrible, but I just felt a grief that I never felt before in my whole life. And I dove into finding a new therapist instantly. I went from a white male who was great, which I needed for the season, to an Asian woman. And she is, every session I'm like, can I pay you more than I'm already paying you, which is too much already? Like I'm obsessed with it. And I think I was really excited to really kind of not fast track, but really get into the hurt and healing with this revelation, because I feel like there's a lot of calling on me on the things I'm working on. And because of the things I have done in the past, feeling half healed and feeling like I've did something and I've changed some people, and I love it. And they've changed me. I'm like, what more could I do healed? And so that's what I mean by just like, I just feel like, yes, I know I'm Asian, but I grew up truly under the guise of like a mother who left her war-torn country to become very American. And like, and I'm like, I get it. Like my mom is the American, she's my hero, but she loves the American flag, and we won't talk about who she voted for. Like she's just very, this is my country, which I understand because she came from something really like gnarly, but I grew up with that too, that mindset of just like the white man and like wanting to be a white woman and wanting to be with a white man. And so I think, and growing up, you're assimilating when you look differently from people, and like assimilation is survival. And so being who I am now and seeing the world for what it is, and then also feeling like there is a rise in Asian American voices, and I get to be kind of a forefront on that for some platforms right now. I'm like, it's an honor and it's cool. So I feel very like, I know myself, but I really know myself right now.
Wow.
That's you awesome. Said you really know yourself right now?
Yeah.
And what's the difference between I know myself and I really know myself? I heard you correct yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I've always been super in touch with my emotions. Okay. And so those things don't shock me. I'm like, oh, I'm just a sad emo girl. Like, oh, my dad has anxiety, so I must have it too. But no, I don't, because I've had some cool spiritual moments and revelations and I feel healed. So I'm like, well, I know myself. And I think I really know myself, meaning more just like I'm able to go back and like look at my younger self and see that I'm good for her as I am now. I wouldn't want to see her as who I was last year.
Sure,
like,
sure.
I think she would like this woman today the most.
Cool.
That's really cool.
I like what that seems to imply. Like there might be a next level of that waiting for you.
I hope so. Yeah.
Yeah. What does healing mean for you? Like define what's Trace's definition of healing? What does that word mean?
It means a lot of things. It means surrender.
Okay.
I think it means forgiveness.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's like, you know, I've had really, you know, out of the world experiences where something happens in your body, you just feel like something leaves you and you're like, is there a Ghostbuster in here? Or was that like, you know, I've had those intense moments, and you know, I believe in God. So I've had some like beautiful godly moments of freedom and feeling surrendered to like something that's way bigger than me. And I love feeling small. So I've had those moments, and then I've had other moments with like my father, and you know, I forgave him verbally for the first time on April 13th. And I have a tattoo on me. So we talked about tattoos earlier. So it's like that moment of healing required forgiveness that I had no plans on doing. So it was always back to feeling like out of body. And but yeah, when I like forgave him, I was like, wow, that healed a lot. We're not perfect. I don't think he's a great dad, but I think like the healing felt like forgiveness, and healing feels not normal. Like it feels magical.
Okay. So not as in it doesn't belong, but it's like a it's
just like, oh, it's not an easy thing. I don't think.
Sure.
Maybe I mean,
Well,
cool.
and magical maybe sometimes implies like it's otherworldly a bit because of the feeling of it being like, wow, this is wonderful, like full of wonder. You know what I mean? I definitely agree with that in a lot of ways.
Right before we hit the record button, and I'm going to paraphrase this poorly, I think, but you said something like, I love not knowing what's going to happen or what happens next or something like that. What was that? Can you restate that sentiment to me and tell me what you mean by that?
I'm trying to remember what I said.
It was we were talking about how like there's no script for this conversation, like there are no questions.
Oh yes. I love not knowing because I'm learning that I'm a low-key control freak, and I think that sometimes control finds comfort in partnering with anxiety. And I'm learning how to better not partner with anxiety these days. And so when I mean not knowing, it's more just like, I want to be really present, and I want to be like looking at your eyeballs and just being like, here we go.
I love that. Ooh, I love that.
I'm struck by your focus here on like, I love the part that frees me from the anxiety. Like, again, to paraphrase, but I love that. I love that what it sounds like your treatment of this is super positive. It's not like I'm dodging anxiety. It's like I love that. I love that this approach is available and we can take that. Is that fair?
Yeah, it is, because it's inevitable. I don't think that I've said this before, but it takes a healthy person to be sad. And I want to make, I'm hoping to, I don't know if there's a stigma around this, but like the younger-ish generation, there is like this praise of being sad. And there's this like glorification of death. And I'm bringing life here. We're talking about life. And I'm like, I'm a fan of emotions. I love being sad. I love, you know, rainy weather and stuff, and put a coat on me, call it a day. But yeah, I think it's knowing that like there is the inevitable like heartache ahead. There is sorrow. There's going to be grief. And I want to always just remember that there is also joy and life and healing and love. So, yeah.
I don't think it was in this conversation, but you said like it takes a healthy person to be sad. What does that mean?
Yeah, I think that there is something about, you know, I think there's a good way to be sad and there's a bad way to be sad.
Ooh,
And
tell
I
me
guess
more.
I guess when I say that, I kind of want to like challenge people to like be healthy when they're sad, you know, in terms of like, you know, if there's a sadness that you feel, I think it's healthy. I think the sadness gets more credibility if it's tackled with curiosity or sharing it with someone you trust and learning about it and dissecting it and finding its root and not being lazy about your sadness, maybe is what I mean.
Yeah. Okay.
It's okay. And I get it too. Like it's a weird statement. So it's a good question you asked that, because I'm like, what do I mean? But I think it's like any emotion. It's worthwhile to really understand it and learn it. And to also, maybe if I can say this, to not brand yourself that way. I don't know. I'm not into it. Like, I'm like, okay, cool. Like, I get it. Like, I love dark eyeliner. I was an emo kid, but you know what I mean? It gets dangerous. It gets dangerous.
Well, and it becomes an identity. And if we're identifying ourselves in sadness, which like, I can't judge and I won't judge anyone else's experience, but for me in my past, I used to be like, well, I identify with struggle. I identify with all these different things versus I feel struggle sometimes, or I am sad sometimes. You know what I mean? And Isaac and I are really intentional about how we communicate our sadness and how we communicate our anger. Because sometimes in the past we have found ourselves wanting to identify in this, like, I'm putting my stake in the ground and I'm gonna identify in being angry. And I'm like, no, how about I just be angry and then move through it and not ignore it, of course. But I love that sentiment. I think about that a lot because I think our words, and you as a singer-songwriter, like, I think our words are really powerful. And, you know, there is space to explore all these feelings through that. And also I love music that also explores what's on the opposite side of that. And even in movies and art and all this stuff, I'm like, where are the movies that like explore happily ever after? Because it always ends there. And for me, I'm like, ... I feel like I'm living in happily ever after right now because I've gotten over the identification of my struggle, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm glad you brought that up. That like pinched a nerve with me in a great way, because I'm like so passionate. I'm so passionate about that. That's why this is the Empowered Human Academy, is because we can feel all the things and go through all the things, and also what are we identifying in? What's our identification, you know?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I want to juxtapose two things, then ask you about how they're connected for you. One phrase that I wrote down, like, I love being used in this way. And then later on, something about control and how sometimes, like, that's a thing that you go for and it might be linked to anxiety. Talk to me about the importance or role of control in your life as coming from you versus being a part of the flow, or what God would have you do, or however you conceptualize this. Like, what's the relationship between like your volition and life kind of moving you, if that makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I am a business and communications major, and specifically a managerial communications major, meaning I love management and I love businesses and I love schedules and I love goals.
Yeah.
So I think when it comes to my own control, I think that I do have a good sense of, you know, running. I have a business and it works for me. And so it's nice to have foresight in the things that I want to accomplish. And, you know, I got dreams, baby. But I think when it comes to, there's just this moment where I have, like, say, I'm looking at the year ahead and I'm like, okay, I want to release an EP this year and I want to blah, blah this year and this year. Okay, cool. So then I think the steps and the scheduling and the control helps me feel disciplined as an artist, because I don't have to clock in anywhere. So I have to, like, if I am very good at relaxing, and I will watch Netflix all day. Like, I literally am that person. I don't think I work too hard, but I think too hard, like, about everything.
Yeah.
And so I think there's that part of just like, okay, this is how I control things. These are how I plan things. But I think at the same time, I hold together, like, in my hand, a glimpse of my life. and like what has happened, and how
Mm-hmm.
literally nothing that has been beautifully, amazingly good has never been because I made it happen. It was, I was a part of it.
Yeah,
I was a part of it. I did some things but it was like the timing, the people, the moment, the thoughts that I said at that dinner party. Like,
yeah.
I think it's a combination of the two. And I think that at the end of the day, what helps me is, though I have plans, though I have dreams and hopes and visions and like an insanely specific mood board for my future home, very specific. I don't doubt any of those things.
Yeah.
But I feel like the gratitude for today keeps me calm.
Yeah.
And I think the realization of my past gives me more confidence that literally nothing is ever going to happen too late. Because for me, my problem is I'm rushing. I want everything now. I'm not 22, thank God, but like I'm not in my 20s. I'm growing older. I want things. I have big dreams. My parents are getting older. Like, I worry. I want things to happen. I want all the things, and I want all the things. But I have to remember that that's okay that I do, but it's not, I'm not going to miss anything.
Yeah.
Like I need to realize that, because I think that's my thing. I'm like, what if I don't release more music soon because people will forget me? That's a thought in my head. Like, or what if I don't do this because, what if, there's an Asian American movement right now? Like, what if I lose my time? Like, what are you talking about? Is what, you know what I mean? But I worry that I'm going to like miss out. But when I look at my life, I'm like, oh, it's super impossible to miss out when you're connected to yourself, to like God, and to like your calm ass like soul,
Yes. I love that. That quote is amazing. Super. Rebecca will probably find this quote and quote it. You've talked a bit about like wanting to, make an impact in this moment, and talk about how you're showing up and being more calm and grounded in yourself. Tell me about this drive. Like, I feel a sense of drive out of you, because do you lean into your 3-wing more than your 5-wing in Enneagram? Okay, 100%, I could tell for sure.
Yeah.
So talk to me about like what you mentioned a bit about, like wanting to buy your mom a house. Like, what as an artist kind of drives you to? Oh, and I also loved, you were like, well, when someone was like, you're going to be the next Lord, you're like, yeah, I know, thank you. Like, that's a sense of confidence that oftentimes some people are kind of like, oh no, maybe I'll get one to be, maybe I'll be like her one day, versus you. What I've noticed in you is very much like, yeah, 100%, no question.
Yeah.
So talk to me about what drives that confidence, or what drives you in general to become whatever you want to become. I don't want to specify what you want to become, but
I have a lot of thoughts. I think one part is that I, perhaps on a defensive day, I feel like I have a lot to prove. I think I think that it's like, I don't have kids, and I feel like I would have kids so I can just show my family that, there is generational healing. There's parts of me that feels like I would like to just, not prove them wrong. No one's expecting me to fail, but I just have a desire to be the first whatever in my family, and to really create a life that they really lost a lot for to give me. So I think the drive is that. It's like, I learned my mom lived in like a tree house, like without plumbing in Vietnam. And I'm like, okay, interesting. Like, that's different. And I can't believe, I can't believe that. And I'm very grateful for like the life that I have because of my parents. And so I think the drive comes from like culturally, and my upbringing. And then I think also just, it feels, when I feel driven and when there's energy behind the things I do, I feel like that's a signal that it's blessed. I think that there's just blessing in it. And I've tried to make a lot of things happen in my life, you guys, trust me, So yeah, I think the drive comes from like a combination of just like doing it for my family or because of my family. And then also because it feels really blessed, and I have really no other option. I say this with the most patient tone, but I just don't want to waste time.
Yeah.
Me too. Me either.
That
I get it.
So holding that idea, I don't want to waste time next to the idea that like there's no possible way that I'm going to miss anything. That's super interesting.
Yeah.
What does that feel like to hold both of those ideas next to each other?
Yeah, I'm a Gemini, so that's why it makes sense, because I'm confusing myself. So I think the tension, maybe the tension reminds me that I think the tension is a signal that I'm doing it right.
Cool.
And I think the tension is a signal that I'm really human. And I need to remember that I'm human.
Oh, I am in love with that idea.
I think it's allowing us to feel all the things that are real. And those can be, I mean, you can be gay and polyamorous, or gay and
gay and homosexual simultaneously?
Monogamous. I mean, talking just from my, I mean, I'm gay, so I'm just like, you can be anything you want to be, and honoring what's real is super important. That's really cool.
Exactly.
Okay.
And also it's like feeding in your 4 and 3 wing, like they're just kind of hanging out together. You know what I mean?
Yes, exactly.
I'm a 3 wing 4, so I totally understand.
Okay, amazing. Yes.
On a meta note, I run a notebook while we're having these conversations, and usually I'm writing down keywords, but for some reason during this conversation, I find myself writing down full phrases or sentences, and that's very unusual. So I guess I like the way you use language. Cheers.
She's a singer-songwriter. Thank you.
You heard me yet? Yeah.
The most recent thing I wrote, when there's energy behind the things that I do, is that a thing that you can optimize for? Or is that just a thing that happens sometimes? Like sometimes there's energy behind the things we do, sometimes there isn't. What do you do with that information?
Yeah, I just like roll around on the ground until I feel.
Honestly, it's a pretty good answer.
Yeah, I don't know. I that's a good question. I mean, I think as I'm learning more about myself and learning more about the crafts that I get to embark on and stuff, maybe I will learn more tools to like kind of optimize that. I think it's clear that if I don't move my body in the morning, there's no way. And that's like an obvious on a physical level, but I know that for me, it's like, I have to move my body. And that's like the one thing I can kind of attest for in terms of finding the energy. But sometimes I move my body for days and then there's nothing left in me for anything. So I'm not sure. It's like a hit or miss sometimes.
Cool. Well, this is linked to the previous thing I'd had written, which was like on a defensive day, which I wrote down because I don't know, it's something about that felt striking, like the language of like on a defensive day versus when I am defensive or something else like that. Like why that phrasing? Why on a defensive day or on a blank day?
Perhaps it's me making sure that you know that I know that I can be like a terrible person. You know what I mean? Like I think it's my tendency as a 4 to be like, okay, like just so you know, like I know what I am like on a good day, and on a bad day, this is who I am, and I'm not always good, you know?
Sure. Yeah.
So perhaps it's over explaining or just like making sure that I'm not seen like incorrectly.
Totally.
Maybe, yeah.
And to be clear, like I wasn't zooming in on the word defensive necessarily. It was kind of the what I perceived as kind of a verbal acknowledgement of like we pass through different states, and I don't know, acknowledging that felt very like non-judgmental of self. Does that make sense? Is that an accurate read, or?
Yeah, that's, I like how you yes, I like how you put that. I think so. I think that there is just so much going on every day. It literally is a new day every day. And so as beautiful and precious as that fact is, it's also like horrifying. You know, it's like some days are just like yes, and some days are like wow, how are we doing this?
Totally.
Yeah.
Tell me what gets you through the days where you ask yourself, how am I doing this? And then also tell me what it feels like in the days where you're like, fuck yes, let's go. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think what gets me through the days when it's like, yikes, I would say it's a combination of, you know, long voice notes with a good friend, a dumb movie that makes me laugh that I'm too embarrassed to watch with anyone else, a really good glass of wine, or making breakfast. It's truly not doing work. I think it's like I'm not writing music, I'm not working on like stuff, and I think it's a lot of just like, okay, like no goals, and I have to really because I think that's too personal, right? When we like, if it's already like an off day, I can't put a goal on the day because I'm useless. So, or I've been grateful to never really have suffered from like stuck in bed depression. So I'm grateful for that. But I think when days feel like that, I think about it a lot. I think about like just diving into my like duvet for like 12 hours.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's a big part of just like, and also just checking in on, or having people check in on me who know I'm off, and whether it's someone who wants to like pray for me or someone who wants to just remind me of who I am, or if it's me playing a voice note that says, please listen on a shitty day, then I do that, you know?
I love that. I love that. It's really cool to acknowledge that, like, maybe when you're in that bad day, it's probably not the best time to create. Maybe it could be, but oftentimes, as with the Enneagram 3s, like, you know, whether it be a primary identification or a wing, like, it's so easy to always be on. And the last thing you want to do when you don't have energy is to create anything. I mean, I know that I've been there, and it's so frustrating. Tell me about now the opposite. Like, what does it feel like to be in this fuck yeah, like, I'm doing it, I'm killing it, I'm the next Lord, all these different things? What does it feel like in that space?
Yeah, thankfully I feel that way more than not. And so I think for me, it's more just like feeling, well, I think it goes back to what I said earlier, of just like, I'm just like, this is an indicator for me though, because I feel very socially thinned out a lot because I have a lot of communities, and really grateful. But as a single woman, I have time, you know, like I have friends who have like three children and a husband, and I'm like, yikes, like, do your thing. That's amazing. I don't understand that. So I have time and all this stuff. But I think on a good day when I'm feeling like, yeah, I do feel like it's a combination of like, okay, I wrote this song, this is great. Okay, I did this poem, and okay, I'm working on this script, and I'm feeling like alive with all my ideas and great. But it also really pairs well and seamlessly with like, wow, I'm just checking in on some people that just came into mind, and I haven't thought about them like all week or all month, or and it was a person who needed to feel reached out to, and I'm saying, I'm dropping enough stuff to someone who needs this, or like I'm calling my parents. Like I feel like when I'm killing it, again, I'm having this energy to, I hope I can say this like fully confidently, like from years to come, but like with love. Like I just like, I feel like I just like love more people when I'm feeling successful and I'm feeling like accomplished.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like fuel.
Yeah. And
positive feedback loop.
Yeah. Positive. In that space of love and fuel, has there been a moment in the last couple of years where you've been like, there's been like a dawning, a realization, a moment where you've written something that you super, super love to this day? Has there been, are there anything that like kind of artifacts from moments of like, I feel really alive?
Like anything I've written in general, or like that?
Yeah, anything. Yeah, totally.
I mean, yeah, yes. I mean, I feel like that's a really difficult, I feel, I've been working on this EP for this last year, and I love the songs, and I think that the things I'm writing feel, you know, of course, more evolved, more personal than ever. So that comes to mind. But I wrote a poem about, kind of again about the shootings. But I remember I couldn't sleep that night, and I was like so like annoyed that I couldn't sleep, and it was very natural. But I just started writing a poem at like midnight, and you kind of, there's sometimes magic, you know, when you let grief guide your hands. And I wrote a poem, and it was I look back at it today and I'm like, yikes, like, wow, that's a lot of grief. That's a lot of sadness, but it felt really beautiful to understand that what I did feel is just as like quite gnarly as it is now. And it's been, you know, it's been some time, but I think that would be a specific piece of something that I wrote like kind of subconsciously, like, and then it's kind of just lingered its way and has guided a lot of my motivations behind the new stuff I'm writing.
Cool. It's really powerful.
It sound how do I want to ask this next part? How do you and flow get on? Like the state of flow, like where things just happen. I don't know if you feel that often in music or not. Like what, when you think of the state of flow, what do you think of?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm so task driven. And so if I'm like, I have a studio session tomorrow and I'm gonna go in and I have a loose list of things I want to sing or write about, but I don't write. I just kind of like us right now, like I kind of just walk in and hear what's happening and then I write. And I'm really good at finishing a song. I can start one and finish one like very quickly, which is not like a cool thing, but just more like I get it done.
Yep.
But I think as I'm getting older and more experienced and working with people I feel closer with, I think flow looks like safety.
Ooh,
maybe, or like trust. So
cool.
Perhaps there's an answer there of just like, if I'm stepping into a place that I'm like, oh, like she knows me. And I'm just like, we'll talk for 3 hours and then start writing a song. Like that's a flow to me. You know what I mean? Versus like back in the day when I used to be signed, I would meet with these like, I don't want to like trash talk anyone because I'm a good woman. But when I would meet different people and they didn't know me and it was very like, next girl. And it's like mostly men producing and there's no flow. There's no flow. You don't even know me. You don't care. I don't feel flowy. And so I think flow for me feels like, you know, safety and trust, whether it is with someone else in the room or with yourself.
I love that.
Does that mean flow? Tell me if I'm making shit up here. Does that mean flow is a default state and we just need to be safe enough to access it? Is that what's implied there? Or something different?
I would love that. I love that implication.
Me too, honestly.
Well, I mean, like flow is, I think when I think of, let's try to get to it together. So like when I think of flow, I think the opposite is like striving. So flow
I'm with you. Feels
natural, or flow feels ethereal almost. Flow feels supernatural. So I think
magical.
For me, if I were to pick some flowy moments, I would say that they were moments that I operated out of either feeling safe or trusted, and or maybe I don't know. It's all the words that we're talking about, like being free, like feeling so like no pressure, and just like almost like even like to go back to the poem I wrote. It's like I was like lamenting. I was just like literally like lamenting, and I'm like. Okay, so that can be a flow. Like that wasn't like a cute time. It wasn't a lovely time. Yeah. But it was still, like it was
real. It was real and
safe.
Organic.
Egoless. Like you're just kind of like it just has to flow kind of like insinuates like you can't stay here. You gotta get out of here. So it's like, what does that look like, you know?
I think I connected to the soul even. Like the soul's very aside from our ego, aside from our thoughts, like our soul is just so pure in my view at least, that you kind of feel soulful in that space too, because it's just so densely real.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's good. I like that.
It's really cool. Wow. I never had dove into the thought of flow like the last 5 minutes, which is really cool. Good job, all of us.
Yay, team.
I want to hang out in your studio room. That's super presumptuous. That's a sacred space. But imagine that your process is really cool.
Come through.
Writing, poetry, music, voice. Why these tools? How did you come to find that they were yours? What's going on there?
I think that we have a voice, and I was told this by like a spiritual mentor that you know our voice can create worlds or destroy worlds, and I want to create worlds. And so I think I'm really grateful that I'm good at writing. I have no idea where that came from. I think that the language I've learned recently too, like really recently, that the Vietnamese language is actually so beautiful. I speak it, but I never really thought about it, you know, and I I had a moment, there's this writer, his name is Ocean Vuong. I don't know if you guys heard of him yet.
Mm-mm.
He's a beautiful queer Vietnamese man. He's 31, 32, and he's a poet and a novelist. And he really is a part of a beautiful movement, but he also kind of reminded me like, oh, we do have like a really gnarly language, gnarly meaning like beautiful, but like there's for instance, there's 8 ways or more to say I love you. And we also don't have a language for goodbye. So we're very romantic. We just say like, we say bye bye, like literally, like, and he mentions that in like a thing, and I'm like, that's so funny. We do say bye bye. And there's certain words that I just feel like, my mom and I speak mostly English, but I was with her and a friend and her mom, and they're Vietnamese, and they speak way more Vietnamese than my mom and I do. And I was kind of like jealous, and I'm like, dang, like that's how Americanized my mother is. But all to say that there's some words that I have found value around to where I can't believe that, oh, that's actually where I'm from. I like come from that.
Cool.
So I get to have that world. And then also being an American and like speaking English, and English is my first language.
Yeah.
I think that I'm forgetting the question, but just like I happen to be a good writer because I think I have been very, very comfortable with emotions since day one. I think I received all of the emotions that my parents could not. And so I think that somehow I was able to become a writer in my life. And I just like diction, and I love language, and I really, 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 really value communication. And so yeah, I think that's when I kind of get to this place in my life where I'm like, what? I get to do this for a living? Like, it's so wild. And I'm grateful that like you can't really teach someone to write music, really, you know what I mean? And I'm trying to protect and grow and preserve the gift that I've been given. And it's really fun.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you for sharing that and for all of this.
But before we ask our final 2 questions of the interview, can you sing us a song? Like just like a little bit, like 15 seconds?
Oh my God. Sing you a song?
One of the songs that you like, or your own,
just like a line.
Yeah, just like a couple lines of your song, one of the songs that you really like that you wrote.
That I wrote that's out or not out, or?
Oh, I mean, you can give us a sneak peek.
Oh my gosh, I just got so nervous. Just sing an a cappella song of a thing I like. I have to think of which song I would want to do that. You guys, hold on.
You also don't have to. This is challenge.
Can I just play like on my phone? Like, can I just like play your recording? Is that not as cool?
I mean, it's not as cool, but I'll close. We can close our eyes.
Okay, but I'm like blanking out on the songs. Let me just look at my list really quick.
Okay.
Another question while I look at lyrics. Okay, I'm gonna sing to it, but you'll hear me.
Cool. Perfect.
When did I give you that impression? That it was okay to teach me a lesson. That's all you're getting.
Yay!
I can't do anymore. I'm gonna throw up.
No, I love it. Thank you so much. Oh, that was so good. So relaxing.
I appreciate you so much.
A couple words. I love it. One of our final questions is, what does an empowered you look like and feel like?
What does an empowered me look like and feel like? I think an empowered me looks like I'm probably smiling more. I don't smile very much. I think an empowered me looks like I'm smiley, or I'm not very playful. So I think like an empowered me looks bouncy and like a little less self, like, what's that word? Just kind of like, I'm not really caring what I look like, because I definitely really care what I look like, and it's like a big thing that I I don't praise, but I'm just like, I definitely get how it looked.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think so an empowered that looks, she's smiley and bouncy, I think, and just more playful, perhaps.
Yeah.
And then I think she feels the same way. I think to feel embodied is, just lighter. Like, my shoulders aren't as high, and my posture somehow is better. And I'm probably just wearing like a bathing suit, just like, this is me.
Hell yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And the final question is, what do you know for sure?
There's no, that's a really intense question. I think that you can never do it. Like, you can never go wrong with loving someone. There's no harm in ever loving someone.
Beautiful.
Trace, thank you so much for being a guest on Empowered Human Academy. It was so fun hanging out with you for an hour. Yeah, I want to go out and get a drink together in LA next time because you're so cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Can't wait for those of you who are listening, go check out Trace's music on oh my God, I was about to say LimeWire. We won't say that. Spotify. And then it sounds like you are going to have some music coming out soon, right?
This Thursday. On the 13th.
Oh, this Thursday?
No
okay,
rush,
check that out, friends. All right.
You're amazing. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Trace.
you guys. Thanks so much.
This podcast is the work of Lightward, our company, named for that toward the light direction which informs every single thing that we do, including money, which means, like everything else, the way we earn revenue is not based on industry norms. It's based on what feels deeply right and aligned by passing through the door that feels like it has more behind it, not less. And the way we keep this podcast going is all Lightward. It's pay what feels good. It's an exchange of value between you and us. We're keeping conventional podcast advertising totally out of this. And here's how Pay What Feels Good works. We give you this episode because it feels good to do so. And you consider, honestly, what number of dollars this episode is genuinely worth to you. I do not care if that's $3, $1,000, or literally $0 and a heart emoji, as long as that trade genuinely makes your day better. And the energy there is the entire point. That is what we're building our business on. No advertisers, no selling your attention, just you and us, trading value in a way that builds us both up. So whatever the number, when you're done listening, head to empoweredhumanacademy.com and hit the Pay What Feels Good button. We use this policy across all of our company's work, and I'm really excited to bring it here to the world of podcasts. This is us voting for the world we want to see. Thank you for being here.